Well, raise your hands if you're looking forward to New Year's, and I guarantee you, no matter how good a party you got, you probably don't want it as much as our president. By all accounts, 2013 has been the worst year of his presidency so far, and some critics have put it among the worst years in recent history for presidents. I think it's a little bit of a stretch, but nonetheless. Real Clear Politics poll of polls puts the president's approval rating just 42%. That's down about 10 points from just a year ago. A year that began, we remind you, with his re-election, second inaugural, 54% of voters now disapprove of the job he's doing. Okay, so we can all pile on here, but Dom, give me a roadmap here where the president turns this around in November. Democrats are dying to have him show up on the campaign trail rather than keep him at 3 feet.
I just don't know how he can turn it around this year. Maybe the following year. Remember what happened to President Clinton when Newt Gingrich and company took control of the House. All the stories were negative against Clinton. It was like I think that was one of the headlines, the incredibly shrinking president. And that's exactly what's going to happen now. The Democrats had a great shot until they messed up this Obamacare. Now they're in trouble. So I don't know what the president, he's a great cheerleader in chief, but get on the road and say what? The Republicans are not going to play with him. Why should they?
Well, I'll give you a few examples. Why can't you argue that of anybody, Republicans would want immigration reform at the end of the day, even more than Democrats. Their pool of constituencies that they have right now, other than old white guys, right? It's a shrinking pool as this country gets more and more diverse. Latino electorate agree with the Republicans on a lot of issues, but because they've been so anti, certainly on the immigration front, they've turned so many away. Issues like immigration, don't you think that it's possible the president could get some of those things through because Republicans have self-interest?
It's possible that Republicans would agree to do some form of immigration. We've seen it in election years. They have done it in the past. The problem now is that it's a midterm election year, and the Republicans' tightest races are in primaries where they're going to be primaried by the right. And so the idea that they would agree to the bill that the Senate has agreed to in terms of immigration reform, Marco Rubio's idea, would be, I think, a little bit of a stretch. So there's a possibility they get something moderate on immigration reform. I don't think they're going to get fully what President Obama wants. And I agree with Dominic. I think it's going to be another tough year for the president. But I think, from my perspective, this has less to do with President Obama than it does with our system itself. I mean, we have had in the postmodern presidency very few presidents in their second term who have done well. And I wouldn't agree with this idea of a curse, but this is the idea of a structure that doesn't favor second-term presidents.
Richard, would you say for Republicans, the thing that they have to be most afraid of isn't a president's agenda, but it's their own primary process? Because they're going to be forced here to take extreme and hardline positions to either try and avoid a primary or to win a primary, and in doing so, it's going to make them vulnerable in the general for people to say, see, look what X, Y, and Z want to do. They want to be a hard line on social issues, or they want to say no to everything.
They're definitely, as was said before, the Republicans and Republican on primary is where the challenge is. And these districts are heavily gerrymandered. So you have to be ultra conservative. But here's what I would say about this. There is a glimmer of hope, and the glimmer of hope is in the economy. I think most economists will agree that the economy is doing better. Now, a lot of Americans aren't feeling it, but I think the focus can be, okay, Congress, let's focus on improving the economy. And I think he gets somewhere with that. So who's going to say no to bringing more jobs to this country?
Two other arguments, Andrew, could be, at the core, he's a likable guy. Very few presidents in recent memory have had people said, even if they disagree with him, at the end, he's had no scandal. He, by all intents and purposes, is a very decent human being through and through. And then there's always the international. Something will happen on the international landscape where, by de facto, you look presidential as long as you're competent.
You've got the possibility of progress with Iran, progress with Israel and Palestine, although how many times
wouldn't
have people
those
said that
require
before?
compromise, which makes it easy to shoot from the
Say
sidelines?
no scandal?
It would require compromise, though. It's international compromise, and he's in a better position to forge that kind of compromise than he is here domestically. He's not going to get any part of his domestic agenda through. But you touched on something earlier that may actually be his hammer here in 2014. You would call it class warfare, the inequality argument. If he can keep ringing that bell and become a campaigner in chief for the entire year and try to work back Congress and run against Congress all year long. He's not going to get his agenda through anyway, so may as well.
Well, look, scandals, IRS scandal on targeting conservative groups, Syria with the red line that they certainly went over with chemical warfare.
My friend,
half the people
my
think the
friend,
president is a liar.
Let's,
I mean,
Let's
scandals?
put some
Absolutely
context, okay?
scandals.
How about those missing WMDs, right?
Oh, well, listen,
No.
you're
Just
right.
that little thing called the
You're right.
war. Okay.
But we got to go back 6, 8 years ago.
You know, we're almost at Christmas. Let me lighten things up a little
All right,
bit.
all
When
right,
we
all
come
right.
back, we'll talk some New York City politics. Sad passing today for a name maybe not everyone knows, but a voice you definitely do. And also, Bloomberg does Saturday Night Live. We'll have that and a lot more as we talk regional politics after this.